Hi, this is Dr. DonHebbard, and we've been talking in this series about skills that couples can use to help improve their relationships. And in this session, I'd like to spend a few minutes addressing a question that is often asked me at my seminars and in classes. People say, what are some signs that we should look for if we need to get outside help? Or said another way, how do we know it's time to call a therapist? So let me suggest to you a few telltale signs that you might keep in mind if they are occurring in your relationship may mean it's time to call in some outside help in this regard. The first one is the most obvious, and that is if my partner is coming to me and saying, I'd like for us to go talk to somebody, that's something that I need to take real seriously. And if you've never thought about this question before, you're hearing me say that and you're thinking, you got to be kidding me. You mean there are people who are in relationships where their partner said, we need to get some help, and they're ignoring that? And my answer to that is, yeah, and that happens more frequently than you can imagine. I encounter a lot of situations where a partner will come in and they will say, I've been trying to get my spouse into counseling for years, and they'll have nothing to do with it. They don't believe in counseling, they don't believe in therapy, they don't believe there's anything that they need to address, and they're just ignoring that entirely. Let me say a word about that, and that is that if my partner is coming to me for whatever reason and saying there's something going on that we need to take a look at, I need to take that really seriously, and I might need to spend some time thinking about that, and conversely thinking about what might happen if I ignore that and we get on down the road. Which leads me to point number 2. The second answer to do we need to talk to a therapist at some point is the time clock running? I have discovered in my years of doing therapy that everybody has an internal time clock that's very personal to them of how long they will put up with bad behavior. And once that unhappy situation starts, once that bad behavior starts, that time clock starts running. And I never know how long that time clock is going to run until they hit what I call the Popeye moment. When I was growing up, there was the Popeye cartoons, and Popeye would reach a point in that cartoon where he'd say, I've had all I can stands and I can't stands no more, and he was done. People in a relationship have an internal time clock that they will put up with situations that are dissatisfying to them. Many times they don't know when their time clock is going to run out. But my experience has been when that time clock runs out and they hit that Popeye moment, I've had all I can stand on this deal, the likelihood that therapy is going to be helpful at that point greatly diminishes. So my point once again is, if my partner is saying there's some things we need to take a look at, I need to pay attention to that while they and we have motivation and resources to work on that particular situation. Number 3, a third telltale sign that people need to visit with a therapist, we need to find a good marriage shrink, is if we find ourselves stuck in the same old patterns over and over again. If you find yourself saying, I feel like we've had this argument over and over and over again, that may be saying that you all are stuck in what I call a loop. There's a negative loop going on there, and you guys are going to do that over and over again, and it's gotten so habitual that you can't get out of it. And it will likely take a third party looking at it from the outside being able to intervene and interrupt that dysfunctional loop. And that's not a bad thing. We all get in those things. But if it's gotten to be an ongoing pattern, the likelihood that you can pull yourself out of that is probably pretty low. A fourth reason couples come to me for counseling is because they've gone parallel. And by that I mean it's possible for two people to be in a relationship and be just marginally connected to one another. In other words, in a good relationship, there is a mass of meaningful and powerful interconnectedness that is emotional and verbal and sexual and financial and dreams and goals and trips and all kinds of good stuff that bonds people together. And that's what makes life so rich and meaningful. It's possible for problems to build up under the rug, move people apart, and they fly parallel, and they have a parallel relationship. Likely, if it has gone parallel, it's probably going to take a little bit of help to bring that thing back to being more engaged. And so if you find yourself drifting apart, it may be a telltale sign that you need to talk to somebody about that situation. A fifth reason that people oftentimes need to get some outside help is because the marriage itself is being impacted by some pretty dramatic stuff outside of the marriage. It may be an addiction to prescription drugs, or addiction to street drugs or alcohol or sexual addiction. There may be the presence of a personality disorder that's going on. An individual is highly narcissistic. The world revolves around me. A person is suffering or dealing with borderline personality. They roll along and all of a sudden there's a big explosion and we're not sure what happened. The presence of personality disorders makes it very difficult. Individuals that have been traumatized, they've been through some real powerful negative events in their past that are now influencing them. They bring that into the marriage. So there are times when the marriage, or the dating relationship even, is impacted by external forces that are them impacting the relationship itself. And that's going to take probably some outside help to take a look at. A final reason that I recommend people talk to a therapist and sit down and visit is because sometimes the individual or the couple have been through a tough season. They may have been through a period of time where there has been one ongoing crisis that has been very difficult to deal with. Or there may have been a whole series of crises occur that have just mounted one on top of another. And the couple is just fine. The individual is going to function just fine. But they need some time to recover from that. They need some healing. They need some understanding. And they need some space in order to regain their life and their perspective back. And it helps to talk to somebody about that. When people ask me about the efficacy of therapy, they'll say, what do you look for in a therapist? The thing I will say to them is, it's all about relationship. It is about you as the client being able to sit down with your therapist and tell them the most important, the most personal, and sometimes the most difficult experiences you've had in your life, and feel that you are completely safe, you're completely accepted, and that that time that they are spending with you is completely about them and meant to help them heal. So if you're needing some help, we recommend you get that, and get that right away.